Definitely not. Definitely not. And the fact that they've got their own reviewer, judge, to come in and have a look at it, or former judge, Heath, to tell them that they're not, should have been a big indicator. What's more remarkable about it is when he said he could not be involved in the why investigation, and yet council have been unable to find somebody for the why investigation yet. And yet council shouldn't be able to find somebody. They shouldn't be allowed. MB should be walking in and taking over and saying we need a why investigation. The public in Tauranga should be asking the question, if the why investigation is done properly and it's found to be top-down trouble, will the why investigation recommend the necessary people being removed for having done the damage, and if they're acting in bad faith, whether or not Tauranga City Council is actually liable at all, and whether or not the individuals that made the decisions should be writing the cheques, because that's what they appear to be expecting from the Bella Vista Homes Director. That's what they appear to be expecting from the homeowners. And when they offered those homeowners, and I dare challenge anyone to think the maths through, if you as a homeowner have just been told we'll pay you what it cost you to get to this point, go to the 11 councillors and offer to buy their houses off them for what they've put into it, up to this date, not what they're worth. What did it cost you to build your house, Mayor Brownless? We'll buy it off you for that. Now, run along and start a new life. Oh no, it's all right for these people. What's the cut-off? Is it after you've been in a house a year, it's okay to pay you what market value back in the day was? Oh no, we're not even going to pay you what the market value in the day was. We're just going to pay what you spent. Is 2 years the limit? Is 5 years the limit? If council gets away with doing this, they totally appear to be, in my opinion and my belief, keywords needed in that sentence, to be subverting the Public Works Act completely. And the Public Works Act requires them, if I recall correctly, that they are required to pay market value. And market value is what the current market willing buyer, willing seller, but you can't get a willing buyer at those homes at the moment because councils bagged the living shit out of them. And so everybody knows they're dangerous and they're going to fall over. Oh my God, they don't have a code of compliance. Their whole water cylinder might fall out and cave the entire house in. Best we offer you this, run along now and pretend it never happened. They are wasting my rates money, everybody that's in Tauranga's rates money, let alone how much tax money is going to get pissed away on this. Because what's going to end up happening is, if a proper review gets done of their decisions, they should have happening to them what happened to Christchurch. And you don't hear any other builders up in arms about this, because they don't want to be next. They are shit scared of being next. We've got private building companies in Tauranga getting their resource consents, their building consents issued in 3 days. Tauranga City's review shows that the average was something like somewhere between 45 and 60 days. And you're saying, well, wait a minute, your statutory requirement is to do this in 20. So what do you do at 20 days? Oh, you peel out some RFIs. Request for information for people that don't know what that is. That's the way the council staff get around, oh shit, I'm not going to get this done within my mandated time frame. Better ask a dumb question. So we've got example after example of asking unbelievably stupid questions. And the best one I've had so far, not that the homeowner will let me mention where his house is, or I'm assuming he's got it finished now. It's been another 8 months. It had been 8 months from when I first went and did some work for him, for when I went back, and he still wasn't finished because of RFIs. And he was doing renovations. The RFI they asked, that I shouldn't have laughed out loud in the guy's face. And I like, I'm sorry, it's just so funny, and I hope you get it. But yeah, a guy on Welcome Bay got asked, his RFI was, no, you can't continue building because you haven't included the snow loading calculation for your roof. And you're just going, where the hell did you send this to get this processed? I'm assuming Christchurch. And you're going, oh, maybe Dunedin, I don't know, wherever else they've subbed the work out to, they've subbed out, we've got more managers in Tauranga City Council. Go and look up, I'm trying to remember his name. I'll find it later, I'll mention it. There's a guy who writes the council league. He explains how each council is performing. He does a very good job, Larry something. And over all the councils in New Zealand, I think there's like 66 or 64 or something, however many there are, he does a table explaining how they're performing. And they say the average number of managers to staff throughout all the councils in New Zealand is 1 to 10. This was 3 years ago. Tauranga was 1 to 4. You've got to remember that 1 to 4 was in the calculation to get the average of 1 to 10. So there must be some councils out there doing 1 to 15 or 1 to 20, and then you've got the bottom end of the scale of Tauranga, 1 to 4. Saying, well, wait a minute. So for every 4 people, you've got 1 manager. Imagine how much we could clean out if you guys just went to the national average of 1 to 10. How many middle management jobs would be gone, and extra money would ratepayers be able to have to spend on stuff that actually needs fixing? That'd be awesome. Are we allowed to talk about that? No, we don't mention that, because that's how our structure works.
So why is the council contracting out work to other councils?
I believe part of that is, one, the performance in-house has got, like I said, there's some fantastic staff in there, but the performance in-house has got so bad that what they need to do is they need to fob the work off somewhere else, so there's no accountability internally. So if there's a mistake on a dumb RFI question, oh, well, that was the lady in Porirua. Oh, it was the Barry down in, Christchurch, or wherever they got the snow loading calculation from. I mean, it was hilarious. And saying, but no one in Tauranga checked it. We've had an argument. My firm has had an argument with council in relation to meeting a requirement of describing a bolt being used on a retaining wall within so many kilometres of the beach. Well, the Act states quite clearly it must be of a particular type, and you've got to specify, as an engineering company, yes, it meets the code. Council sent an RFI back to that, saying, oh, you've said that it'll meet the code, but you didn't say what sort of bolt it was. I said, well, we did actually say what sort of bolt it is. It's 10 by 9 by whatever the hell the description of the actual bolt was. Oh, no, but you haven't. We need to know what it is. Saying, well, it's a bolt that meets the code. That's our requirement. That's what the Act says. It says we must confirm that it will meet the code. If it does not meet the code when you do your inspection, then you can tear us apart. But until then, that's your job. You don't need to know anymore. That is the RFI answer. You've just bought your 20-day delay is up and running. Why? Why did you need to do that? Oh, well, we need to know if it's galv or if it's stainless. Well, actually, the Act doesn't require that you know that. It just requires that you know this. Now, a lot of people have critiqued me on why would you argue with them about, why don't you just tell them? The architects are telling me, oh, just tell them. The engineers in Tauranga have got together and gone, while we know they're wrong, oh, look, just do it and bill the client. Just do it and bill the client. I mean, as having built a couple of homes, and it wasn't easy to get into your home in Tauranga, you sit there and go, you're starting to sound like some of the lawyers I've met. Oh, well, we'll just bill you another half-hour increment. Oh, I'm arguing a point that's not even in your case. I've looked into it for you. Here's the time schedule it took to look into it. The scope of the job is very definitive. Part of our concern, or my concern, is that they're moving away from that to the point where you don't get to question it. And the elected officials aren't questioning it. And when you do challenge it, they take the complaint to the individual. The individual looks at it. In this case, okay, I think I said to you earlier, we put complaints to Gary Poole and to Kirsty Downey. Your staff, Act, outside of the Act, explained it, handed it to the staff member. The staff member then looks at it and goes, I've reviewed my own work and I've done nothing wrong. After that date, anything we put through, not everything, but a lot of what we were putting through started getting challenged. Oh, we want that peer reviewed. Oh, we don't believe you inspected that properly. Oh, you've put that hole in the wrong place. And saying, from an inspection perspective, when as an engineering company, so a lot of the engineers versus the surveyors, the engineers are there to inspect a particular purpose. That is the mandate of the job. Yes, it meets the standard. Yes, it's 600 wide. Yes, it's 5 metres deep. Tick, it meets the specification. But you didn't make sure it was in the right place. We're not surveyors. We were there to inspect holes. The surveying part of it is the surveying part of it, and the inspection part of it is the inspection part of it. If we were required to inspect that the holes were also in the right place, then that would be an additional job, wouldn't it? But why would you get somebody that's there to inspect something relatively simple to do the job of the surveyor you've already paid? Why would you get the engineer at engineering rates to check something that the builder's apprentice or the builder's subbies could do? This makes no sense. And yet the expectation is that council's starting to ask so many RFIs, you realise it's not actually about the process, it's about delaying the process. And the building companies that are turning their own building consents around in 3 days have no concern about council delaying every other little builder in town or other subcontractor in town, because theirs are still getting processed in 3 days, so they don't care. They're not going to say anything. It doesn't affect them. In fact, it's good for them. It's good that every other builder is going through this trouble. They're making so many mistakes that should be, and the subbing it out means that you get to blame someone else if something goes wrong. I'd say it's negligence. It's not necessarily understanding the job. And the staff that do understand the job, I've done this before, you walk into a situation with staff, owners or managers aren't sure what's going wrong with the business, and they say to you, critique my business. You go through it, you spend a few months looking through everything, you talk to every staff member and work your way up as to what needs to change, why, what's not working, why, and piece it together, and you'll find a lot of those answers are actually held within the staff, but the management's not listening to them because you're treading on their toes. And when you look at if it's not intentional misconduct or malfeasance of office might be the phrase to look up, but if it's not that, I'd hate to believe that they've been able to hire people that have got that level of stupidity when they've got such a high calibre of staff at the lower end that actually know what they're doing. But I can't imagine any of those staff are going to want that job because they're watching how badly it's going down. And sooner or later, someone's going to hopefully come to the realisation, maybe the new CEO, that he needs a very big broom. And they need to start putting that management level of staff that are giving reports to senior management or to the elected members, signing a declaration across the bottom of it. The 4-page summary I've given you contains all the pertinent facts. And if it doesn't, my attached pre-signed resignation is at the back of this. Take some responsibility for the information you're giving, but the level of people that you'll meet in there that are just blown away by it and they're just trying to keep their heads down, and the poor bastards know or should know that if this actually comes to what it should come to, there's going to be a lot of jobs going. And a lot of the ratepayers in Tauranga should be furious with the money we're spending on unnecessary consulting. And the beautiful part with the consulting, if the other businesses I've watched is reflective of council, is that, look, we've trimmed our wages bill. Ignore the subcontractor bill over here. It's got nothing to see here. Look at all the jobs they deferred over to Bay Venues. Oh, our council bills have come down. Oh, but Bay Venues went through the roof. But don't worry, they're a self-funding entity of their own. Oh, we're topping them up every year, but ignore that. That's not actually dead money. That's not actually, we're reinvesting. We're reinvesting. No, you're paying to prop them up. You're paying to prop up the art gallery in town. What's that, 800 million a year? You're throwing into something that you said would be self-funding. They keep providing information to the councillors or the elected members, and the people making those reports, I've had someone quote to me, we give the councillors the information they need to make the decision we want. So they reverse engineer the question. One of the best examples I've got of that was they made them a rather interesting selection process error in their museum review when they rang random people and said, hey, we'd like you to come in and have no university education, certain age range, and sat people around a table to discuss the museum idea. What was interesting about it was I got selected, so that was quite interesting, funny. But all the questions were reverse engineered. It wasn't about, do you think a museum is a good idea? It was, where do you want it? Are we going to put it here or are we going to put it here? Are we going to have car parking in a cafe, or are we going to have a playground car parking in a cafe? Are we going to have free entry for locals and a playground and a cafe, here or here? And they said, what do you want to see in the museum? Every time they asked that question, I was like, a self-funding destination. Well, what does that mean? I mean, that's one that the ratepayers don't have to pay for. This is such a good idea in a commercial area on a piece of unstable land that you're going to have to drill piles through to below the railway track height. It's going to cost a bit. How many buses are you going to have to come through there a day? What's your cost-benefit ratio? Oh, you can ask all those questions at the end. I said, well, you haven't actually asked or explained if we can afford a museum. You're just saying we're getting it. Oh, well, it's just a preliminary interview. But yet then when they presented the data to the public, it was like, look at all these people want a museum. No, they didn't. They wanted a museum on the basis of the information you gave them at the time, which was the costings of no consequence. If the costing's out of the picture, what would you like? Well, if the costing was out of the picture, I'd like a McLaren. Oh, and I think everyone in town should have one. It would be great. But the minute that you actually brought in a cost restraint, they didn't want to talk about it. I said, well, where are you getting your numbers from to say where you can afford to put it? Because you say there, but I know the geotechnical costs of putting it up on Cliff Road are substantively dearer than you putting it in the hollow down over there. Don't get me wrong, and that might sink, but this could fall on a train. So what's the cost difference between building there and building there? Or are you saying that we build there, that comes out of the overall cost and we get less stuff in our museum, but over here we get more stuff because we build it in a cheaper place? Well, is there a cheaper place? Is there somewhere else we can put it? Here's an idea. You're going to have to buy the boulevard anyway. Why don't you rip it out and put your museum there? You're already going to own the land. I'm pretty certain 50 mil, you pay out all the homeowners, give them $1 mil each. What's that, 21? That leaves you, what, if I can do my maths correctly, 29. I can't picture you couldn't put a museum there for 9 million. You give you some spare cash. Who do you need to pay off to change your decision? I was not welcome at their meeting. So when you look at how they've done it, the whole idea of the subcontractors and the questions being asked, everything is spun. And what I find most offensive in Tauranga is we used to have a newspaper that I would believe would print the other side of the story, but now they're both captured. They have been ring-fenced and they are getting rates money. You're going to give up $1 million worth of advertising to print the truth? No, it's not.
Proof?
Yeah, definitely. It's actually written in the report they got done, and it names the building company. That building company is not going to want to be named because it's going to really upset them. So they've got a number of shareholdings and a number of other companies. One that just went down for 13 million in town. So no one's publishing the associated directors on that, but they're publishing the associated directors of anything that Danny Kansian had a holding in. Say, oh, look, that company's still doing okay. Well, that company's still oh, why aren't they putting money back into the Bella Vista thing? Because a lot of the public don't actually understand how companies work, or necessarily the meanings of the different types in relation to limited liability or personal guarantees. So that company that's getting their process is processing their own consents. They have authority to process their own consents. I believe the only time they're going to get affected by the drama that's happening in council, which is part of the reason I think they went for going through all the rigmarole, and it's a big ass problem to get your own consenting authority. They are still subservient to the local authority. So it's essentially still a subcontracted right to process their own consents. So they are not getting affected because they are not requiring council to process them. And so here's an external crowd able to do something in 3 days that Tauranga City Council can't do in 60 or 30 or whatever you'll have to look it up. I don't have the numbers, as you know, notes. I'm all off the top of my head from memory. They had a review done to work out what was going wrong. And council's own report came back saying, hey, the question I wanted answered was, where you've come up with your 45 days or 60 days or whatever it was taking to process a consent through the council process at council, when you did your average to average that out, did all those numbers include all the properties, this company over here that was processing its own consents in 3 days? Was that 3 day number on the houses they processed. And if it was taken off the council, what would it extend their average to be? Again, it's something that I don't have the time to go and ask, because as I said earlier, the problem is every time you argue with a bureaucrat, you're wasting your time and your money because they're getting paid. And every RFI I've had through where I've been able to question it, and you go back and say, I'm not answering this. You have the answer to question 1 on the set of plans I provided you in the application that you signed off the first time. And so for a modification, no, you already know that. Why would you ask me again? No, we require you to send it to us. Are you losing files? That's all it's asked. Are you losing files? Have you been destroying files? Has my company pissed you off enough that you're going, poke? And so when I follow through the process, I'd like to believe that they're beyond it, but they're not. The building examples I can give, I've got another gentleman who will give me permission to use his building file as an example. We can clearly show they must have lost a file. And yet, will they just admit and update the plan? No, we'll only update the plan with this proviso that you've asked for it to be updated, not that it's accurate. Well, you sued this guy for his house not being compliant and ordered him to rip stuff out. And if we did what you said, it would actually make the house non-compliant, and you've said that if we do what you say, the house would have a CCC. Well, how can it have a code of compliance if it's non-compliant? So you're just willing to write that sort of stuff up to hide your mistakes? Or you don't want the mistake highlighted that you're losing files? Taringa City Council, Western Bay went through a thing a long time ago, Western Bay particularly I think it was, where they had a whole lot of files that were lost in the fire, was the statement used. Lost in the fire was reference to, I think, a building in Te Puke burning down. That's not actually how the files got lost, that was how some of the files got lost. When they merged them all into one place, the engineering department used to be, or the building department used to be in charge of certain files, admin used to be in charge of other files. When they merged those files together, the people doing the merging, I think, were from admin, and went, we'll use, building file 105. Oh, here's another 105. Oh, we've already got it. Oh, 106. Oh, here's another. Oh, no, another 106. Not realising it was a completely different thing. That was the one with all the plans in it. This one was in with all the paperwork in it. And they burned a whole lot of it. It went into a skip bin and got burnt. The fire. You need to talk to some former staff members to validate that as being true. I've heard it from enough people to find it hard to believe that it was not the case. But that was about a bit of internal throw back and forwards as to who was in charge and who controlled what documents. Well, hey, those are dirt monkeys, they're the civil engineers. Anything they've got in their file we'll already have, without realising they hadn't actually copied everything across. No one actually opened it to look.